Om Gana Chimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You may recall a few days ago we discussed various apparent intoxication pastimes involving Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. There were 3 of them, if you may remember, 3 of such leelas. 2 of them kind of had the same format, but one of them was very different. Does anyone remember those 3 so-called intoxication incidents? I want to go over those incidents because as we concluded that session on the way out, Yashodev Das mentioned that, yeah, those pastimes when he first read them, and he must have read them without Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary. He said they're kind of bewildering, like, what's going on here? So let's talk about the first one. Brief, but very sweet. Remember, Lord Chaitanya is walking around Navadvip, as he liked to do, accompanied by Srivas, and they were walking on the outskirts of town, and they happened to start to walk by a tavern, or you call them bars here. Other places they call them pubs. So suddenly, by smelling the wine, the odor of the wine drifting out onto the street, Nimai Pandit becomes instigated to go into Balaram mode. And you remember, right? Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit as Krishna himself, contains all the expansions, all the incarnations. So it's totally normal from the viewpoint of Krishna Tattva, the science of Krishna, that Nimai Pandit could launch into Balaram Bhava. So what is he smelling? He's not exactly smelling wine, but you got to understand, everything is Krishna's energy. And on the highest platform of bhakti, wherever you look, whatever you see, whatever you smell, whatever you taste, immediately brings about remembrance of the ultimate source, the source of all the energy, Krishna. So, as Lord Chaitanya explains to Ramananda Roy in Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvatra Jangama Deke, Na Deke Taramurti. For the Mahabhagavat, for the topmost devotee of the Lord, such a person, such a devotee, sees material things, but immediately connects the sight of material things to Krishna, the source of the material thing, and so immediately such a Mahabhagavat devotee sees Krishna everywhere. Actually, as we know, the material energy simply means disconnection from Krishna, material for us, because we don't connect the energy to the energetic source. But when the love of Krishna becomes so intense, wherever you look reminds you of the beloved, and immediately you see the beloved. Just like a mother with a little child, sees the little shoe of the child, and immediately thinks of the child. That happens on the material plane, but it can happen much more on the spiritual plane, because remembering Krishna and seeing everything in relation to Krishna is smaranam, one of the 9 processes of devotional service, which brings about the presence of Krishna, just like chanting brings you the association of Krishna. That's chanting the Hare Krishna mantra at its peak potential. So I'm explaining this so you understand how it is that Nimai Pandit, just by smelling the fragrance of wine, immediately gets into Balaram mode and is in Vrindavan, Braj Baruni, the beverage coming out of the trees in Vrindavan. No ordinary beverage, no ordinary intoxicating beverage. So, as we discussed in relaying this pastime, smelling that and launching into Balaram mode, Nimai Pandit says, "We're going inside the tavern. Let's go in." He shouts, "We're going in. We're going in." And poor Srivas doesn't know what to do. And who remembers some of the reasons why Srivas Thakur was trying to restrain Nimai Pandit? He knows Nimai Pandit's in trance. He's out of this world at that point. He's in Balaram Bhava, smelling Varuni beverage in Vrindavan. But Srivas Thakur is worried, how is this going to look? So who knows some of the reasons? Who remembers some of the reasons Srivas Thakur gave to Nimai Pandit? And what was Srivas Thakur doing? Falling on the ground, holding Nimai Pandit's feet, trying to stop him from going inside. And when he's doing his full dandavats on the ground, holding the feet. What's the first one? Yes, you are the supreme source of Dharma. You're supposed to set the example for all the universe. Who knows the verse in Bhagavad Gita? Utsideha ime loka nakuryam karma chet aham. Krishna says in the Gita, if I don't set the proper example, indirectly I could be blamed because I'm the source of all the living entities. If they misbehave, if they don't have a proper example, the discredit could come to me. So that's Krishna in Bhagavad Gita giving some reasons why he appears in this world. So that was one reason that Srivas Thakur gave, desperately trying to. And the other reason was the critics, those who are offending, blaspheming you, as if you're an ordinary, mundane person. They'll have even more fuel for their fire. Their criticism will get worse, and their fate will become worse. Nimai Pandit is not so cooperative. Just, do I always have to follow rules and regulations? In other words, I'm the source of everything. The material energy is my insignificant energy. Why are you putting this on me? And Srivas Thakur gives his third reason. Who knows? Who remembers? Yes? How am I going to explain this Leela to anyone? Who's going to understand this? Nimai Pandit, the Brahmana, the crest jewel of the Brahmanas, has walked into a tavern full of drunkards. So what was Srivas Thakur's ultimate, you know everything, it's someone else. What was his ultimate way of preventing Mahaprabhu? You remember, Jessenia?
Jump in
I'm I'm going to jump in the Ganga and drown myself if you do this. One day you'll see the Ganga. Yeah. I'll drown myself. So, Lord, Nimai Pandit, Lord Chaitanya, for the desire of you, my devotee, all right, I won't go in. And gradually, Nimai Pandit comes out of his trance, his Balaram Bhava. Meanwhile, the drunkards inside the tavern, they're whooping it up, staggering around the tavern and, hey, Nimai Pandit! Oh, he sings so nicely. Ah, I like his kirtans. I like his singing and dancing. And they're staggering around, totally loaded, totally wasted. And so, of course, Nimai Pandit is not going inside now. He's going to walk past the place. But the drunkards inside decide, we're going to go outside and follow him and have a Hari Nam party. So they stagger out the door of the pub, or the bar as you call them here, and they're trying to chant. Jai Narayan, Hari, Hari. Something. They were trying to imitate a kirtan. And they were chanting the holy names in various fragments. And so Srivas Thakur, who had objected to Nimai Pandit entering the pub, Srivas Thakur's heart melted so much on seeing the drunkards staggering around trying to have kirtan that his heart melted. And Nimai Pandit glanced favorably over the drunkards. And that glance, who can calculate the auspicious benefit? So remember what Vrindavan Das Thakur, the author of Chaitanya Bhagavat, said about this incident? Very important. He said that, just see, because Navadvip was the chakra, the center, the capital of all Vedic learning without Krishna as the ultimate end. They knew astrology, they knew logic, they knew Sankhya, they knew mystic yoga. All of Navadvip was famous for every kind of Vedic supplementary knowledge, but no knowledge, no understanding of the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas. As Krishna says in the Gita, Vedaishta sarvaya ahameva Veda. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. But in Navadvip at the time, it was, by all the Vedas, I am to be forgotten. So they had the most sophisticated pundits and scholars and rishis and sages in Navadvip. But often they could be very critical of Nimai Pandit. He's unsurpassed in his intelligence, but what is he doing with this sentimental chanting and dancing? They were criticizing, making offenses. So Vrindavan Das Thakur's point is that these drunkards are much, much, much more fortunate than these critics in Navadvip, even though they're sinful drunkards. We'll explain more about this because it's a very important point about why Nimai Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, does what he does. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that it's true that these drunkards may not achieve perfection in one lifetime, but because they've chanted Hare Krishna, it's such a rare fortune for them. At some point, that great fortune will ignite more obviously. So it's admitted they're drunkards. And the Shastra says they didn't give up their habits after they were imitating a Harinam party, staggering around. Jai, Jai, Hari, Hari. They didn't give it up their alcohol. But still, they had some core sincerity amidst their degradation, their degraded habits. And that's what Nimai Pandit picked up on. And that's to the great credit of the drunkards. They had some appreciation, some honest appreciation of Nimai Pandit, something some of the greatest sages and pundits and scholars in Navadvip had zero of. In fact, they would criticize Nimai Pandit. So then we went to another pastime, which was different. Nimai Pandit and Nityananda, Lord Nityananda, they're walking. They just left the town of Jaleshwar. And on the way, they met one Durga follower, so-called sannyasi, wearing red and known to be an indulger in all kinds of simple activities in the name of worshiping Durga, the goddess of the material energy. So you might be shocked to know, as we discussed, Lord Chaitanya starts chatting with such a degraded imitator of a sannyasi. Oh, tell me, how is it? It's been so long that I've never met you. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? Who are your associates? And so the Shakta, it's a worshiper of Durga Devi, material energy, is so touched and so motivated. Oh, someone's interested in me. And he begins to spill out his whole life story and inform Lord Chaitanya of every Shakta in the whole region. I know this one. You asked about my associates? I know that one, and that one, and that one. All deviants. And then he's so impressed by Lord Chaitanya's charm and also the influence of Mahaprabhu's energy that he says, I'd like to invite you to my house. I have some very nice bliss drinks. In other words, as you know, he's inviting Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, come have some alcohol. Come, some bliss drinks. So what does Lord Chaitanya tell him? First, you go and prepare your house, prepare the drinks, and then we'll come. So the Shakta is so happy. They're gonna come, they're gonna come. Okay, I'll go prepare everything, I'll set up the drinks. But Lord Chaitanya never came. But you may wonder, how did he even agree to come or give the impression that he'd come? So Vrindavan Das Thakur, remember what he pointed out? That the implicit understanding is that Mahaprabhu can deliver whoever he wants. So the devotees understood, the devotees around him understood something that we may have difficulty understanding today, that Mahaprabhu can give to whomever he wants, and that person then becomes a bhakta, even though he was a Shakta, and whoever that converted Shakta, who's now a bhakta, encounters also becomes a bhakta. So although there's no account of what happened to the Shakta after he went home and Nimai Pandit didn't come, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya knew this is what's going on. They understood the implicit purport of why Lord Chaitanya said, yeah, we're coming to your house for drinks, set everything up, but never came. The third example we discussed is a bit more spicy. In brief, Nityananda is accompanying Lord Chaitanya. Evidently, Lord Chaitanya was not wearing at the time sannyas clothes, so it was before his sannyas initiation, but Nityananda was wearing sannyas clothes. And so they met another one of these degraded, red-clad worshippers of Durga who engage in all kinds of tantra and tamoguna, so-called religion, flesh, eating flesh, drinking wine, engaging in sensuality. So you remember, this guy became so attracted to Mahaprabhu. Oh, he's such a beautiful looking young man. I bless you that you will have wealth, a beautiful wife, good family. And what was Lord Chaitanya's response? Who remembers? He said, why you, he said, Goswami. He's being a bit, how do we say, honorific. Goswami, please, why are you offering such a benediction to me? Better you give me some benediction for spiritual advancement. And what was the so-called Goswami's reaction? You remember? Ekavir. This is the essence of life. Enjoying money, woman, youth, wealth. Don't you understand that? He's telling that to Lord Chaitanya. And then the deviant Durga worshipper began to lament. Just see the nature of Kali Yuga. You give your best intentions to someone and they criticize you, they don't accept it. Just see how Kali Yuga is developing. I blessed him to have money, beautiful wife, material happiness, and he's criticizing me for doing that. What is this? And then Mahaprabhu takes the opportunity to preach that we don't need blessings, we don't need endeavors for material happiness. Whatever you're due is going to come anyway. And he gives the example, just like a fever. You don't ask for a fever, but it hits you. Similarly, material happiness is like that. You don't have to strive for it. And if it's so great, wealth, beautiful companion, if it's so great, why do you lose it at the time of death? And we were discussing the other day how this sounds so prehistoric, so primitive. Why worry that you're going to lose at the time of death when you can have it for a few moments? That's what counts. Why just bring out the death part? Why is that so important? But Bhagavad Gita is always training you to think about the bookends on the bookshelf. One bookend is birth, the other bookend is death. But we say, no, forget the bookends. What's in between the bookends? Make it as juicy as you can. And that's it. Most people have this attitude that if I just try to enjoy as much as possible, then I'll die in peace. I'll relinquish because I've had it all. I'll just have the attitude, yeah, I had a good life, I did this, I did that, let me die. It doesn't work like that. The better you have it, the more attached you become. I gave the example, I think, of my mother, bless her soul, who, after 50 years of marriage, her nice husband departed at the age of 95 or something. And so for the past few years, she's living alone in the house. Of course, she has plenty of relatives in the immediate area, children, grandchildren, so on and so forth, 2 doctors. And so, but she said, I'm so lonely. I said, well, now you have time for meditation, contemplation. No, but you don't understand. After 50 years of being with someone and the person is gone. I said, well, why don't you look at it that you had 50 good years and be grateful for that? But she says, no, the 50 good years makes it worse. You feel the loss even greater because it was good. Now it's gone. In other words, it almost sounds like better not to have a good time at all because you become more attached. So this is what Lord Chaitanya explained to the deviant, that if what you say is so great, why then do you lose it at the time of death? At that point, the deviant, just see. This is what I get for speaking to such a young person. This young boy, what does he know? And me, I have been everywhere in the world. And he rattles off a list of so many holy places he's been to. Everywhere in the world. I've been to Hardwar, I've been to this place, that place. He names about 10 places in India. I've been everywhere in the world. And yet I have in front of me this young boy trying to give me advice. Oh, what's the world coming to? It's Kali Yuga. Then Nityananda jumps in because the deviant had concluded maybe it's not just this delusion is not just because of this young boy, it's because of this sannyasi who's traveling with him. Maybe this sannyasi who's traveling with him has polluted the young boy's mind with deviant ideas about how wealth and sensuality is unwanted. But Nityananda says, wait, please, Goswami, have mercy on that young boy. He's just young and inexperienced. So he calms down the deviant. Nityananda calms him down. So then the deviant so-called sannyasi says, let's have something to eat. Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya's, I think it's time for us to go. But the deviant persists that just stay a while, rest, take a bath, have a little something to eat. So Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya do that. They go bathe in the Ganga, come back, rest a bit. They eat, but they don't eat anything the deviants cook. They have some milk, some fruit, some mangoes. They eat that. And then while they're eating, the deviant says, you know, I've got some ananda. And he makes a motion. Wouldn't you like some ananda? He's persistent. And Lord Chaitanya doesn't say anything. Nityananda refuses. But the deviant kept insisting. Ananda drink. Don't you want an ananda drink? The deviant's consort, one of his consorts, came to the rescue. She was looking at Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, seeing how beautiful they are, and she kind of chastised her companion. Just leave them alone. Why are you disturbing them when they're trying to eat? But the deviant kept on, Ananda, Ananda. So Lord Chaitanya, meanwhile, you would think, being omniscient, he understands what's going on. But this is Leela, this is pastimes. So Lord Chaitanya says to Lord Nityananda, what's all this talk about Ananda? And Lord Nityananda says, he's referring to drinks, alcohol. Lord Chaitanya suddenly gets up, stops eating, goes and washes his hands. He and Nityananda take off and plunge into the Ganga. So, we'll bring in from that point, because that's where Yashodev Prabhu had a question. Like, this is why Nityananda Chaitanya becoming kind of caught up in such sinful places and having near misses with intoxication. So we'll start. The Lord said, what is this Ananda the sannyasi is talking about? Nityananda replied, I think he's talking about wine. Vishvambara remembered Lord Vishnu. He washed his hands and immediately left. The two lords jumped into the Ganga. So after jumping into the Ganga, what did they do? They floated in the Ganga toward the house of Advaita Acharya. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So what's going on here? There's a connection between Lord Chaitanya apparently associating with such drunkards, sensualists, and his rejection of the association with Mayavadis. So this is the point. Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating better to associate with these drunkards and sensualists than to associate with the Mayavadi sannyasis. They're the worst. So we read, the Lord bestowed mercy on womanizers and drunkards, but he annihilates blasphemers, even if they are well versed in Vedanta. So in the purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that ordinary people who are intoxicated by material enjoyment and who follow worldly morality give more respect to impersonalists than to drunkards and womanizers. But the supremely independent Lord, who is most merciful to the living entities, does not approve of this consideration, which is born of external perception. Realizing that the conception of the Vedantists, who are averse to the Vaishnavas, is completely opposed to devotional service, he refutes it. Yet he displays compassion on the weak, the womanizers, and the drunkards. So Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating the worst are these Mayavadi offenders. Even though they may be sannyasis, they may be austere, they may be mystic yogis, they are the worst because they offend Krishna by denying his name, form, qualities, and pastimes as being beyond the material energy. This takes some thought. So Vrindavan Das Thakur continues to explain. Although this so-called sannyasi drank wine and intimately associated with women, the Lord visited his house. So in the purport, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes that Sri Gaura Nityananda bestowed mercy on even this sannyasi, this fallen sannyasi, to reveal that in a comparison of various kinds of association, the association of Mayavadis is more abominable and undesirable than the association of drunkards. So you may be thinking, why the emphasis on this point? It does clear things up a bit, you would agree, yes? But why the emphasis? Because certainly in India at that time, 500 or so years ago. And even today, impersonalist sannyasis are considered, they call themselves Jagat Guru, spiritual master of the whole universe. As Prabhupada would always quip, they haven't even been out of their village, but they're so people give respect because such austere sannyasis are able to quote from the Vedas. They know everything except the conclusion of the Vedas. So people respect them. They're wearing saffron cloth. They're expert in Sanskrit. Very austere, very rigid. And here is Nimai Pandit showing you better to associate with drunkards than these guys. Very striking example. So now you might be thinking, what's so bad about Mayavadis? There's a difference between an impersonalist and a Mayavadi. An impersonalist, sometimes called Brahmavadis, are those like Shukadev Goswami was before hearing the glories of Krishna from his father while he was in the womb of his mother. They, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Sabhyate. The absolute truth is there in three phases. When seen from far off, the absolute truth is impersonal. When you get closer, like you're driving on a road and see a mountain up ahead, when you get closer, you see Paramatma, the super soul. You get even closer, you see Bhagavan, which is the ultimate perception, the ultimate reality. But that same absolute truth is known according to your degree of perception. If you see the mountain from far off, you just see a vague form, dark form up ahead. You get closer, you start to see the shape of the mountain. You get even closer and you see roads and houses, etc. on the mountain. So, impersonalists can be such that they're just at a particular phase of their spiritual development. They may be stuck in that phase. They don't know anything better. But a Mayavadi actively, vehemently denies Bhagavan realization, Paramatma realization. There's just Brahman, and somehow or other from pure oneness comes the illusion that there's a material world and that there are individual personalities. So if you explain that Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes are purely spiritual, the Mayavadis cannot handle that. How can anything that is variegated with personality and form be spiritual? So this is the utmost offense and blasphemy. But sometimes our devotees don't understand. I think I've told you the story before. I was in Japan. That was about 25 years ago. And one elderly Indian gentleman came up to me, and he was saying, I saw your Swami 30 years ago in Tokyo, sometime in the early 70s. There was a big gathering that the Hindus put on for the Hindu residents of Japan, and we invited all the top Swamis and yogis we could invite. And your Swami, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, was one of them. And we invited so many different types. We didn't mind which doctrine they have, because, whatever path you take takes you to the same goal. So he was describing how one Mayavadi speaker, he didn't call them Mayavadis, of course, he called one venerable sannyasi after another was speaking, and before Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would speak. And so each speaker got worse and worse from the vision of the devotees in the audience. Prabhupada was there with about 3 or 4 or 5 devotees. And each speaker was getting worse and worse in deriding, there's no Krishna, there's no Rama, there is just the oneness. Beyond all form, beyond all personality, which is Maya, beyond that is the pureness of oneness. It was getting worse and worse, and Prabhupada was starting to get seemingly very restless, and the speaker went on and on. Finally, Prabhupada turned to the devotees with him, 5 of them, and because the devotees at the end of the program were supposed to make kirtan, so they had their cartels, their drums, their big whompers. And so Prabhupada said, jump up on the stage and start kirtan. So right while the dignified Mayavadis was speaking, all of a sudden the devotees jump on the stage. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. and the speaker was just like astonished, like. And so the audience, the elderly Hindu audience, they didn't know what to make of it. I mean, sadhus are supposed to never disrupt anything. They're supposed to be placid, and everything is just all Brahman, and everything is all the same, and you're not supposed to show any duality. So 30 years later, I met this Indian gentleman, and he said, I can't understand why your Swami did this. He couldn't forget it after 30 years. So this is one reason why Nimai Pandit is doing this, what he's doing. Better be a drunkard and a womanizer than an offender. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains in the purport that sins can be counteracted by pious activities, but not offenses to Krishna and to Krishna's devotees. And so we go on to read, the Lord taught this deviant sannyasi religious principles. He took rest in his house. He ate there. Even if the sannyasi could not attain perfection in this life, he would in the next. But the blasphemers will never achieve perfection. So then there's an incident from Kashi, which is a place in India, holy place in India. The sannyasis there, staunch Mayavadis, denying any variegatedness in the Supreme Absolute Truth, vehemently denying it in an offensive manner. So they heard Lord Chaitanya is coming, and they thought, he's one of our group. We belong to the same lineage. He's one of us. We want to see him. We heard he's quite famous. He's God. We're all God. Let's all get together and be God. Each one of us. There's no each one of us, because actually we're all the same. So Lord Chaitanya ducked them. In other words, he didn't associate with them. He didn't go to their gathering at that time. And they were very disappointed. Why is he avoiding us? We are what we are. We are the elites on the spiritual ladder. We are Vedic sannyasis. But Lord Chaitanya is showing them, showing the world, I'd rather be at a house of a drunkard sensualist than associate with you guys. Come to your place. So that's why this is going on. So you got it? Nimai Pandit knows that people will take it very lightly. Oh, they're just a different sect. They're wearing saffron. They know Sanskrit. They can juggle words in Sanskrit so brilliantly and come up with 1,000,000 different interpretations. How fascinating. But Lord Chaitanya is showing these are offenders who are worse association than even drunkards. So that's why he's doing all that. Also, these are his pastimes. He's Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the most fallen. But offenders, they're in a different category, even though they may be wrapped in the most spiritually prestigious veneer. No, Lord Chaitanya said, I'm not going to go. In fact, he left unbeknownst to those persons. And they were wondering, why did he go? How could he do that? We are so great. We are God. He is God. How can he leave and not come and associate with us? So that's what's going on. But thinking about the mercy of Lord Chaitanya brought us last time to discussing Uddhava's exclamation, remember? Aho bhakiyam stana kalakutam. Who do you find more merciful than Krishna, who, although Putana came to kill him with her poison-smeared breast, he gave her a position in the spiritual world equal to that of his mother. She became a nurse in Goloka. So how do you find anyone more merciful than that? In other words, Krishna took the least qualification and gave the highest benefit. So we want to discuss Lord Brahma's reaction to that. He exclaims in the 10th canto, chapter 14, after the Brahma Vimohana Leela, the bewilderment of Lord Brahma, he's offering prayers. So I've always wanted to study these prayers as a whole. So he's going to get to the point of putting it to Krishna. You gave yourself to Putana. What do you have left to give to your real devotees who sacrifice everything for you? The residents of Vrindavan sacrificed their homes, their wealth, their children, their minds, their bodies, everything for you. But you've given yourself to Putana. How does that add up? So that's verse 34. But before we get there, we're at verse 30. Verse 30, the Acharyas point out, especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Brahma is referring or coming from the point of Dasya Bhava. It's like we have Dasya Prem, so servitude. He says, Tarastu me nata saburi bhago, bhavetra vanyatra tuva tarashtam. Yenaham ekopi bhavajjananam bhutta nisheve tavapada pallavam. My dear Lord, I therefore pray to be so fortunate that in this life as Lord Brahma, or in another life, wherever I may take my birth, I may be counted as one of your devotees. I pray that wherever I may be, even among the animal species, I can engage in devotional service to your lotus feet. So this is a prayer, the Acharyas tell us, glorifying Dasya Bhav, Dasya Prem, servitude, love of Krishna. So there's a conversation that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur presents. Krishna says, Oh Brahma, what's your desire in your prayers? And Brahma replies, O Master, in other words, indicating, I'm your servant. And the Lord tells him, O Brahma, consider carefully and pray for the most valuable thing. And Brahma replies, Yes, I have discerned the most auspicious thing of all. What is it? Whether I'm born as Lord Brahma, or whether I'm born in low species such as a deer for many births. Whatever birth I have, from the highest to the lowest, I pray to take birth as one among your followers. this is maybe hard for us to understand because we're so fixed on, at least I should get a human form of life in my next birth. I'll practice a little bhakti, and hey, if I fall away, at least if it's all true, I'll get a human form guaranteed next time. But here's Brahma saying, I pray to be so fortunate that whether my next life is as Lord Brahma or wherever I take my birth, however I take my birth, let me be one of your devotees, even if I take birth among the animal species. My birth, in other words, doesn't matter, even if I take birth as an animal, as long as I can engage in devotional service to your lotus feet. This attitude is echoed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who says, Kita Janmahal, I don't mind taking birth as an insect, as long as it's in the house of a devotee. So what do you think of that? There must be something so inconceivably extraordinary about bhakti that these greatest personalities can say like that. I don't mind taking birth as an insect, as long as it's in the house of a devotee. So Brahma is referring, for example, to a deer. I don't mind taking birth as a deer, but let me be a devotee. Especially, the acharyas say he's saying, let me be a deer that licks the dust off the limbs of Krishna in Vrindavan. Never mind the form, let me have the service. So that's Brahma starting to get into his Braj mood. And from the next verses onward, he's going to start referring to the raga, the attraction that the intimate devotees of Vrindavan have for Krishna. Vatsalya Prem, Madhurya Prem. And then he's going to get to the verse where he says, look, Krishna, you gave yourself to Putna. What do you have left to give to your dearest devotees? You already gave yourself. So we'll discuss that more tomorrow, along with whatever else comes to my mind. All right, any questions? Yes.
Can you just kind of explain or comment something about why Lord Nityananda was wearing sannyasi dress?
He's Avaduta Nitai. He does everything he wants, regardless of any social protocols, social customs. That's why he's Avaduta Chandra, the moon of the Avadutas, those who display behavior beyond Vedic rules and regulations. Whereas what happens when Nimai Pandit takes sannyas? Huh?
Very strict.
They're so strict it puts his followers into pain. And what does Nityananda do to the danda of Lord Chaitanya? He breaks it.
Throw through the Ganges.
Why?
Because he is Vaishnava and because he is supreme personality of Godhead.
He's the natural Paramahansa, one who's beyond all rules and regulations. Why does he carry a danda? Why does he have to follow strictly when he's the source of dharma, all dharma? But Lord Chaitanya wants to set the example. And Nityananda says, what do you have to set any example for? That's the way Nityananda is. Avaduta means one who is beyond showing any rules and regulation behavior, beyond all material influence. It doesn't matter to him. So when Lord Chaitanya is in Balaram Bhava, because Balaram is Nitai, Nityananda, and he smells the wine, he immediately, Varuni, Vrindavan, like an avaduta. Anything else? Yes.
Guru Maharaj, you explained the difference between impersonalists and Mayavadis. So I was kind of wanting some additional clarification, like the people that we meet generally on, like, through preaching, like, are they mostly Mayavadis? Because they're not like, because you said one is.
They're innocent people who babble something they've heard. They're not offenders. They're not coming up to you saying Krishna is Maya, his form is Maya, there's no personality of Krishna, there's just the oneness, everything else is illusion. They just read some book, Be Here Now, or something like that. And they're just repeating some jargon they've heard. They're not dyed-in-the-wool offenders. Sometimes you meet those who are, and there's not much you can do for them, except pop a samosa in their mouth, shut them up.
Do you watch the Indian temples where they have like all kind of, like there's this big temples and they just have all kind of deities? That's Mayavad?
Yes, but most of them don't know that. They just think it's Hinduism. All paths lead to the same goal. Tolerate everyone and everything. It's all the same. But a Mayavadi that Lord Chaitanya is talking about is one who is avowed, focused. There is no individuality. I've met them from time to time. I asked them to read the purport in Bhagavad Gita, where the purport to the verse, Natvevaham jatunasham natvam neme janadava. Never was there a time when I was not an individual, never will there be a time, and the same for you all. Krishna is saying like that. So I had them read Prabhupada's extensive purport, where he defeats with Shastric quotations as well as logic how this is total madness. And so I had the person read it. It was a young lady who had been trained in Shankaracharya's version of the Vedas since birth. And so I had her read, and she was reading and reading, and she started shaking. It just shook her to the core, that because she's been trained up so dedicatedly in impersonalism to the extent of it being an offense. There's no Krishna, no individuality. Or they sometimes want to be very condescendingly nice. Yes, Krishna is the greatest manifestation of the material energy. So this is what Lord Chaitanya was so determined to refute, and this is what Prabhupada was so determined to expose. Somehow the world had gotten to the point before Prabhupada's coming to the West of thinking that Vedanta means Mayavad. No one knew much about bhakti, but they all thought that Vedanta, the Vedic version, means impersonalism, excluding any individuality, personality, qualities. Nirguna. Nirguna means no qualities. Whereas, as the Shastra points out, as the Acharyas point out, Nirguna means no material qualities. So they bandy about terms like Nirguna Brahman. And you're supposed to, ooh, Sanskrit, oh, deep. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. So what's the difference between Mayavadis and atheists?
Slim.
Okay.
As the Acharyas point out, Mayavad is covered atheism. If we're all God, what does that mean? There's no, yeah, right. If everyone at your business is the boss, How often do you run into a dyed-in-the-wool staunch Mayavadi?
Never.
Right. Eh, In India, you'll come across them, and sometimes they come to the West still. It's faded a bit, but most people you meet are just, they don't know anything, and they're just repeating something they heard in some music, or I am he, and we are she, and we are all together.
The staunch Mayavadis also come from other religions, like, because I know that.
But we're talking specifically about denying the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna.
I know Islam, they deny any personal relationship that you could have with the higher.
Some Islamists might debate you and say that, a very few, that there is information about the 99 qualities of Allah and so on and so forth. Yes.
Do they still count, building on this discussion of Mayavadis, do they still count if instead of talking about kind of the traditional Brahman, they talk about quantum fields, and everything comes from that?
Do they talk about that?
No, I'm saying, do they still count as like these dyed-in-the-wool Mayavadis, if instead of like saying everything comes from this kind of traditional view of Brahman, they view how everything comes from an inflationary quantum field, like cosmologists say.
That's for you to. You are the cosmologist. A great opportunity for speculation, isn't it?
Yes, good.
Anything else?
Good. I will try my best to explain my thoughts. You mentioned that Mahaprabhu can make anyone a devotee if he wants to.
Yes.
And as you discuss about Mayavadi and impersonal, I was relating the pastime of how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered Bhoma Bhattacharya, his name again?
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and I was wondering whether Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was an impersonalist or Mayavadi.
Definitely.
Mayavadi?
Yes.
Yeah. So do we see that example in this age, or there's a
Someone as bright as Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was the greatest scholar in all of India. He's also Brihaspati, brilliant personality in the heavenly planets. No ordinary personality. All right, last question, because I think tomorrow morning for a Bhagavatam class, His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj is giving class.
Yes, Gurudev. And at 8 to 10, after the greeting with you.
Yes.
Guru Maharaj, you mentioned about Smaranam earlier. How can we increase quality of our Smaranam?
By increasing the quality of the chanting. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam is the basis. Hearing and chanting about Krishna is the basis for all the other 7 processes of devotional service. The more attentive you hear, the more lovingly you chant, the easier it is to remember. So we'll see what we continue with tomorrow night. Maybe the prayers by Lord Brahma, as he gets increasingly more intimate. He's starting off with Dasya Bhava. Let me be a servant. I don't care what kind of body I take, animal body, deer body, but make sure I'm a devotee, then I don't mind. What's the use of my being Brahma? What's the use of that? I can take birth as a deer, especially a deer that licks the dust off the limbs of Govinda. And then he's building up. He's getting to the point where he's going to say, let me take birth as a blade of grass. Because Krishna can say to him, the Acharya say, Krishna can point out, why don't you ask to be a cowherd boy? But Brahma says, oh, that's too beyond me. Let me take birth as a blade of grass in Vrindavan. And then he backs up and says, okay, I'm not even qualified for that. Let me be a stone on a footpath outside of Vrindavan. So that the residents of Vrindavan, when they go out of Vrindavan, they walk on me. The dust from their feet is on my head. But why don't you ask for the dust of the feet of Govinda? Oh, better I ask for the dust of the feet of the devotee. That's more practical and pragmatic. All right, we're fortunate to have Ekavir Prabhu with us tonight. Haven't seen him for so long. I briefly got a glimpse of him on Sunday. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.